The smell of metal and smoke filled the air of Krellin Station, a dark place floating between forgotten planets. Humans and aliens moved through its narrow halls where lights flickered weakly, and the sound of crying echoed from behind iron cages. Captain Elias Ward stepped into the marketplace, his boots heavy against the steel floor. He came only to refuel his ship, not to buy lives. But the sight before him made his chest tighten. Rows of beings were locked behind bars, some begging, some silent, their eyes full of fear. The auctioneer shouted prices, his voice mixing with the crowd's greedy cheers. A chain rattled, and a young alien woman was pushed forward. Her skin was pale silver, her hair glowing faintly blue under the lights. She looked proud even with the collar on her neck. Her name, the auctioneer said, was Lyra, half-blood Zreen. Too defiant, too wild, no master wanted her. The man laughed cruelly, saying, "She bites," and the crowd jeered. Elias didn't know why he stopped walking. Her eyes caught his cold, angry, yet full of something that refused to die. The auctioneer waved a stick at her, and she didn't flinch. "No one wants this one," the man barked. "Let's start low 100 credits." No one raised a hand. Guard shoved her, and she fell to her knees, still silent. Elias heard himself speak before he could think. "I'll take her." The room went quiet. Dozens of eyes turned toward the human captain. The auctioneer grinned. "A human buying a Zreen? You sure, Captain?" "They hate your kind." Elias threw the credit chip on the table. "I'm sure," he said. His voice was calm, but his heart raced. Moments later, Lyra stood behind him, her wrists still cuffed. Her lips trembled with fury. Not fear. "You paid for me," she said softly. "Now do it." Elias turned to her. "Do what?" She glared. "Own me. Command me. Whatever humans do after they buy slaves." His voice lowered. "That's not why I bought you." She looked confused. Angry and suspicious, they walked through the docking tunnel toward his ship. The Solace. The guards whispered behind them. "He's mad," one said. "Humans don't keep Zreen," another replied. On the ship, his crew looked at Lyra with surprise. "Who's she, Captain?" Asked his engineer. Elias simply said, "A passenger." He ordered a cabin prepared for her. Clean clothes and food. Lyra refused to eat. She sat in the corner of her room, watching the stars through the small window. Her thoughts burned. Every human she'd met before saw her kind as tools, weapons, or worse. But this man? He looked at her like a person, and that scared her even more. She thought maybe it was a trick. Humans always had reasons. Hours passed. The ship moved silently through the void. Elias sat in the control room, staring at the stars too. He wondered what made him do it. He didn't know this woman. Didn't even know if she would trust him. He only knew he couldn't leave her behind. Late that night, Lyra walked onto the bridge. Barefoot, quiet. "You should sleep," Elias said without turning. "I don't sleep easily," she replied. He looked at her reflection in the glass. "You think I'll hurt you?" He asked. She said nothing. "I won't," he added. "Then why buy me?" She finally asked. Her voice cracked slightly. "Because no one else would," he answered. The silence that followed felt heavy, but not hostile. For the first time since the auction, Lyra didn't look away. The next day, the ship's scanner beeped pirates in range. Elias ordered shields up. The crew ran to battle stations. The ship shook as plasma fire hit the hull. Lyra watched, then closed her eyes. Her telepathic senses reached out through space. "They're flanking you," she said quickly. Left side. Elias turned the ship just in time to fire back. When the last pirate ship exploded, the crew cheered. Elias turned to her. "How did you?" She cut him off. "I felt them." She looked tired but proud. "You saved us," Elias said quietly. She crossed her arms. Maybe now I've paid my debt. He smiled slightly. You don't owe me anything that night. She stood again at the observation window, watching stars drift by. Humans are strange, she whispered. You buy what you want, yet you free it. Elias stood behind her. Maybe we're learning, he said. She looked back at him, her expression softer than before. You really won't hurt me? She asked. Never, he said simply, and for the first time since the war took everything from her. Lyra allowed herself to breathe. The cold space outside seemed a little warmer, and the man who bought her felt less like a master and more like a mystery waiting to be understood. The solace drifted through endless space, its engines humming softly. Inside the ship, silence stretched like a heavy blanket. Lyra spent her days in the small cabin Elias had given her. She sat by the window, watching stars move by like slow sparks. The human crew avoided her at first, whispering in the halls. They didn't understand why their captain had brought an alien woman aboard, especially one with a slave collar now cut and tossed away. Elias tried to act as if everything was normal, but the crew's stares bothered him. He knew what they thought. He had broken the law of half the galaxy by freeing her. Yet every time he saw Lyra sitting there quietly, something in his chest said it was the right thing. One morning, he knocked on her door. Breakfast, he said. She didn't answer. You need to eat. Lyra, he said again. The door opened slowly, and she stood there, thin and pale, her silver eyes cautious. Why do you care? She asked. Because you'll die if you don't, he replied. She looked at him for a long second before taking the tray and closing the door. Days passed like that, quiet and strange. Lyra began to walk the corridors at night when no one was awake. She moved silently, her bare feet making no sound on the cold floor. Sometimes she paused by the bridge, looking at Elias asleep in the pilot's chair. His head rested on his arm, his face calm, not cruel like the men she'd known before. She didn't understand this human. He had bought her, freed her, and now treated her like a guest one evening. While checking the control systems, Elias felt a soft presence behind him. Could you teach me? Lyra asked. Teach you what? He said, surprised. How to fly this machine, she replied. He smiled a little. It's not easy. Neither is surviving, she said. He nodded, and for the first time, she sat beside him, watching as he guided her hands on the console. Her skin was cool against his, and she listened carefully. As the ship crossed the outer belt of the Korath system, alarms suddenly blared. Pirate ships incoming, shouted the crewman on watch. 3 vessels appeared on radar, closing fast. They're scanning us, Elias said. Prepare evasive maneuvers. The crew scrambled, and the ship trembled under the first blast of plasma fire. Lyra grabbed the edge of the console. They'll circle behind us, she whispered. They're using swarm tactics. Elias frowned. How do you know that? She closed her eyes. I can feel their minds. They move together. Elias didn't question her. He steered sharply left, fired the rear cannons, and hit one of the ships. The explosion lit up the darkness. But another pirate ship came closer, ready to board. We're losing shields, yelled the engineer. Lyra's breathing quickened, and she pressed her hands to her temples. Her telepathic power pushed outward like a wave. For a moment, the pirate pilots screamed over their own comms, their minds struck by a shock of pure fear. Elias seized the moment and fired again. The final ship spun out and vanished into the void. Silence fell once more. The crew looked around, stunned. What was that? One whispered. Elias turned to Lyra, who was shaking, sweat running down her neck. You saved us, he said quietly. She looked at him weakly. No, I just didn't want to die. Then she collapsed. Elias caught her before she hit the ground. He carried her to the medical bay, laid her on the bed, and stayed beside her for hours. She slept deeply, her breathing uneven but steady. When she finally woke, she saw him still there, his hand resting on the side of her bed. "You didn't leave," she said. "You needed rest," he replied. Lyra studied him carefully. "You risked your life for me again." Elias looked away. "You risked yours first. Why?" she asked softly. "Because I don't see you as property, Lyra," he said. "I see you as someone who deserves a chance." Her eyes shimmered. She turned her face away, whispering, "Humans killed my family, took everything, and yet you." Her voice broke. "You act like none of it matters." Elias spoke gently. "It matters, but maybe this is how we change it." Later that night, Lyra walked alone to the observation deck. The stars felt closer here, shining against the black sea of space. She whispered to herself, "Why does he care?" The reflection of Elias appeared beside her. "Because no one cared for me once either," he said. She turned to him, surprised. "You?" He nodded slowly. "War takes more than lives. It takes peace from inside you." She looked at him for a long time, her voice soft. "Maybe we both lost too much." "Maybe," he said. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. But now it felt different, not cold, not empty. For the first time, Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you," she whispered. Elias met her gaze. "You're welcome," he said. Outside, the stars continued to glow, and somewhere deep within the endless dark, two lonely souls began to trust each other, not because of fate, but because kindness had done what war could not. It had built a bridge between enemies. Days passed quietly after the pirate attack. The Solace sailed through deep space. Far from any law or patrol, the crew repaired the hull, and life returned to calm routines. But for Elias and Lyra, silence held a different weight. She had saved them all. Yet she still carried a chain heavier than any collar. The chain of her past. Elias often saw her sitting alone in the observation deck, her hands folded, her eyes far away. One evening, he joined her. "You haven't spoken much lately," he said gently. Lyra didn't look at him. "Talking never helped me before." Elias sat beside her. "Then maybe listening will." She turned slowly, her silver eyes shining in the faint light. "You really want to know?" He nodded. "Only if you want to tell me." She took a long breath. "I wasn't born a slave," she began. "My father was a scientist of the Zreen. He believed peace was possible between humans and our kind." Elias listened quietly. "He worked on a treaty one that would unite our species." She hesitated. "But the Human Council rejected it. They called it a lie. And the Zreen warlords saw him as a traitor." Her voice trembled. "They came to our home at night, killed him, my mother, everyone. I was 16 when they sold me." Elias's fists clenched. "You were just a child." She gave a small, bitter laugh. "Children mean nothing when war needs bodies." She looked down. "I hated humans. I still do sometimes." "But you confuse me." Elias frowned. "How so?" "You act like you care," she said quietly. "And I don't know if that's real." Elias turned to her. "It's real." He wanted to do more, to free her completely. Not only from chains, but from the laws that marked her as property. That night, he opened the ship's console and began sending messages to the Galactic Council system. Requesting amnesty for Lyra, he explained she had saved human lives, that she deserved citizenship. The replies came cold and fast. Denied, one said. Zreen half-breeds are classified as unstable property. Elias slammed his fist against the desk. "Unstable property?" he repeated bitterly. Lyra stood in the doorway, having overheard. "Don't waste your time," she said. "They don't see me as a person." Elias turned sharply. "They're wrong." Maybe, she whispered. But their words still bind me. He stood and walked toward her. Not anymore, he said. I won't let them decide your worth. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the metal collar she once wore. He held it in front of her. This is what they see, he said. A chain. He threw it on the floor. But I see strength. Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. If you do that, they'll come for you. Ilias's jaw tightened. Let them. She shook her head. You don't understand. Freeing me without clearance means breaking interstellar law. They'll brand you a traitor. He stepped closer, his voice firm. Then I'll be a traitor for a moment. She couldn't speak. The ship lights flickered softly. The space between them felt heavy. Why? She whispered. Because no one should live in fear of a name, a brand, or a law, he said. You deserve to live free. The next day, as the Solace passed near the patrol zone of the Council, a flashing signal appeared on the radar. Incoming Vessel Council enforcement ship, the pilot warned. Lyra's face went pale. They found us, Elias ordered. Shut down engines. Prepare for boarding. The crew exchanged nervous glances. Minutes later, the airlock opened and 3 armored guards stepped in. Captain Elias Ward, one announced. You are charged with possession of unregistered alien property and violation of Council Code 9A. Elias faced them calmly. She's not property, he said. The guard smirked. She's listed as Zyrine Hybrid, serial code X54. Lyra's hands shook. She stepped behind Elias instinctively. Stand aside, Captain, the guard ordered. We'll take her, and you'll face your punishment. Elias refused to move. No, the guards raised their weapons. You'll regret this, one growled. Before they could step forward, Lyra's eyes glowed faint blue. Her voice echoed softly inside their minds. You will not harm him. The guards stumbled back, clutching their helmets. Confused, Elias shouted, Stop, Lyra. But she didn't. The air grew heavy as her telepathic energy pulsed through the corridor. The guards froze, their weapons trembling in their hands. Go, Elias said quietly. Now. The men turned and retreated to their ship. Sealing the airlock, Lyra fell to her knees, exhausted. They'll send more, she whispered. Elias knelt beside her. Then we'll run. Run where? She asked weakly. Anywhere the law can't reach, he said. They left the patrol zone and vanished into deep space. The Solace became a ghost ship, hiding between asteroids, moving only when safe. For the first time in years, Lyra laughed softly. We're fugitives, she said. Elias smiled. We're free, she looked at him, her expression soft. You risked everything for me. I'd do it again, he said. But why? Because you remind me what being human really means, he replied. In that quiet moment, surrounded by the dark of space, Lyra realized something she had never allowed herself to feel trust. The chains that once bound her had turned to dust, and the man who bought her had become the man who set her heart free. The Solace drifted through the black silence of space, hidden far beyond the reach of patrols and trade routes. Elias and Lyra had been running for months, hunted by both human and Zyrine authorities. Yet for the first time in their lives, they were truly free. They had found refuge on a small green world called Haven 9, a forgotten moon with forests, rivers, and no transmitters. Elias built a small shelter near a riverbank, using the wrecked parts of an old escape pod. The house was simple, made of metal and stone, but it was peaceful. Lyra helped him every day, gathering food, planting seeds, learning to live like the ancient settlers once did. The nights were quiet, and the stars reflected in the water like tiny diamonds. At first, they spoke little. Silence had been their only safety for too long. But soon, silence turned to soft words. Words turned to laughter. and laughter became something warmer. Elias had never known peace like this. He watched her walk through the green light of morning, her silver skin glowing, her long hair brushing her shoulders. He had saved her life, but she had saved his soul. One evening, Lyra sat by the river while Elias repaired an engine part. "Why are you still kind to me?" she asked suddenly. Elias looked up. "Because kindness doesn't cost anything. It cost you your freedom," she said softly. "You can't go home now." He wiped grease from his hands and smiled faintly. "Maybe home isn't the place anymore." Lyra turned her gaze to the horizon. "Humans never stay in one place," she murmured. "They keep moving until they find something worth stopping for," Elias said. "And have you?" She hesitated and smiled shyly. "Maybe I have." Days blended into months, and their small home began to feel alive. Birds nested on the roof, flowers grew by the walls, and the air always smelled of rain. Elias taught Lyra old earth songs, and she taught him Zreen meditation. Sometimes they would sit in silence for hours, listening to the wind. Then one night, under a storm of falling stars, Lyra stood near the river, holding her stomach. "Elias," she whispered, "something's changing." He rushed to her. "Worried? Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears in her eyes. "No, I think I'm with child, for a moment." Neither of them spoke. The rain fell softly around them. Elias finally smiled, his voice quiet. "Then the universe just gave us a reason to stop running." Lyra touched her stomach, trembling. "But what will the child be? Human? Zreen? Or nothing?" Elias took her hand. "Ours," he said simply. "That's all that matters." Weeks passed, and Lyra's strength began to fade. Her powers drained her faster now, and Elias did everything he could to help. He built a safe room under the shelter, stocked it with supplies, and checked the skies daily for ships. But their peace didn't last. One morning, the scanner flickered to life. Detecting movement above the planet, Elias stared at the screen. "Council patrols," he whispered. Lyra came to his side, her face pale. "They've found us." "How?" he asked. "Maybe the pirates sold our coordinates," she said quietly. Elias clenched his jaw. "We can't fight them." Lyra took his hand. "Then we hide." They packed quickly, but before they could escape, the sky thundered with the sound of engines. Ships descended like iron birds, dust rising around the small house. Elias grabbed his rifle. "Stay behind me," he said. Lyra shook her head. "If they take you, I'll lose everything." Soldiers in silver armor surrounded them. "Captain Elias Ward," shouted the leader, "you are under arrest for harboring fugitive property." Elias stepped forward, his weapon raised. "She's not property," he said. Lyra's eyes began to glow again, her telepathic energy pulsing like light. The soldiers aimed their guns. "Stand down." One yelled, but Lyra stepped forward, her voice echoing in every mind around them. No more slaves. The ground trembled, her energy spreading through the air like a storm. The soldiers froze, unable to move. Some dropped their weapons, others fell to their knees. Gasping, Elias ran to her. "Lyra, stop. You'll kill yourself." She shook her head, tears running down her face. "Not if it means freedom." The ships above began to retreat, their systems shutting down from the psychic wave. Elias held Lyra tightly. "It's over," he whispered. She looked weak, her body trembling. "Promise me." "You'll protect the child," she said faintly. He kissed her forehead. "With my life." As dawn broke, the sky cleared, and silence returned to Haven 9. The soldiers were gone, their ships drifting powerless. Lyra lay in Elias's arms, breathing softly, alive but drained. He carried her back to their shelter, whispering, "You saved us again. Weeks later, the child was born, small, quiet, and with faint blue light in her eyes. Elias looked down at her and whispered, "You're proof that love can survive even the laws of stars." Lyra smiled weakly. "Then maybe the galaxy still has hope." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and freedom. The wanted man and the freed woman sat together, holding their newborn, unaware that the story of their love was already spreading through the stars, whispered by traitors, rebels, and dreamers. The story of the human who bought a slave and built a family instead. The child grew quickly, her eyes bright like twin moons, and her laughter filled the small home on Haven 9. Elias named her Myra, a name that meant peace in the old Earth language. Lyra said it also meant light in Zreen, so it was perfect. Myra's tiny hands glowed faintly when she touched things, and her presence made the air around them feel warm and alive. Life on Haven 9 became simple but beautiful. Elias hunted small creatures for food. Lyra sang to the child, her song soft and full of old memories. The war and the fear of the past felt far away. Every night, the three of them would sit outside under the stars. Elias would tell stories about Earth, about oceans and rain, and Lyra would tell tales of the Ziran skies, where lightning danced between purple clouds. Mira listened to both, her eyes wide, her little heart carrying two worlds inside it. But peace never stays hidden forever. Traders who passed near the outer belt spoke about a strange energy wave that disabled entire fleets. The council feared it, the Zirine called it the Lightborn Signal, and both sides began to search for its source. Soon, the name Captain Elias Ward returned to the council lists. Marked as a traitor turned myth, some said he had died. Others whispered he lived among the stars with a child of light. One morning, Lyra looked at the sky and said quietly, "They will come again." Elias nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He didn't want to fight, but he would protect them with his last breath. Mira ran to him, laughing, unaware of the danger. Her tiny hand reached up to his face, and a soft glow surrounded them. The machines nearby hummed, as if touched by invisible power. "She's growing stronger," Lyra whispered. "Her mind connects with everything around her." A week later, their scanners picked up a signal, not from soldiers, but from a broadcast tower orbiting far above. A voice spoke through static. "To the fugitive known as Elias Ward, your actions have changed history. The council wishes to negotiate." Elias froze. Lyra held his arm. "A trap?" She asked. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe they finally understand." They decided to go. Not for themselves, but for Myra. They boarded the old ship Solace once more. Patched and worn but still alive, the engines roared as they left Haven 9 behind. Mira sat between them, watching stars with curiosity. "Are we going to the big city?" she asked. Elias smiled. Something like that. When they arrived at the council station, dozens of ships surrounded them, but no weapons fired. The docking bay opened, and a voice spoke. "Welcome, Captain Ward." The hall beyond was filled with reporters, soldiers, and officials. For the first time in history, a Zreen woman walked beside a human man, holding the hand of a glowing child. The council chamber was silent as Elias stood before them. "You broke the law," said one elder. "You freed property." "You defied your own kind," Elias replied. "Then the law was wrong." Murmurs spread through the room. "You created something unnatural," another said. Pointing at Myra, Elias's voice rose, calm but strong. "She is not unnatural. She is the proof that love can exist beyond fear." Lyra stepped forward. "You made slaves of both our races," she said. "And yet this child, born of two enemies, carries peace inside her." Myra, sensing the tension, reached out with her small mind, her telepathic light spreading softly through the hall. The guards who had once come to arrest them lowered their weapons. The council members blinked as memories of war and hate melted away for a moment. The oldest counselor stood, tears in his eyes. "Perhaps we have been blind," he said quietly. "Perhaps the law must change." Cheers and whispers filled the chamber. Some called it a miracle, others a beginning. The decree was signed that day slavery of all species outlawed, and the human Zreen Accord was born. Years later, Elias, Lyra, and Mira returned to Haven 9, now no longer fugitives, but symbols of peace. Travelers came to hear their story. Pilots named their ships after the solace. And children across the colonies were taught about the captain who bought a slave and found a wife, the woman who turned chains into love, and the child who changed the stars. On quiet nights, Elias would sit outside, watching Myra chase the fireflies by the river. Lyra would rest her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" She'd ask softly. He'd smile, not for a second, even though it began as a deal. She teased. He chuckled, especially because it began as a deal. Myra's laughter echoed through the valley, her light reflecting off the calm water. And in that moment, the galaxy that had once known only war finally knew peace, not because of weapons or power, but because one human refused to walk away when he saw a girl in chains. And one alien dared to believe that love could be real. Their story spread from star to star, told by travelers, sung by poets, remembered as the tale of the solace, a story that began with a deal but ended with a family.